In the unforgiving world of Navy SEAL training, where 80% of candidates wash out before completing the program, failure isn't just an option, it's almost guaranteed. But what happens when someone who seems destined to fail discovers that their greatest weakness might actually be their most powerful strength? This is the true story of Maya Rodriguez, a 24-year-old recruit who arrived at basic underwater demolition/SEAL training with everything working against her. Smaller than her peers, slower on the runs, and struggling with every physical challenge thrown her way, she was labeled as a statistical certainty for dropout by week 3. Every drill became a public display of her limitations. Every run left her gasping, while others barely broke a sweat. Every rope climb ended with her hanging halfway up, muscles screaming in defeat. The other recruits whispered that she was just taking up space, delaying the inevitable. Even the instructors seemed to look through her, as if she had already vanished from their program. But on a rain-soaked Tuesday morning in week 4, when Maya was seconds away from ringing the bell that would end her military dreams forever, Commander Jackson Hayes, a legendary SEAL with 3 tours and a reputation for breaking the unbreakable, stepped forward with an order that would shatter every assumption about strength, failure, and what it really means to be unstoppable. What happened next didn't just change Maya's life. It revolutionized how the entire SEAL community understood the true meaning of never giving up. Maya Rodriguez had dreamed of becoming a Navy SEAL since she was 12 years old, watching a documentary about female combat roles while recovering from her 3rd surgery to repair a childhood leg injury. The doctors had told her parents that she would always walk with a slight limp, that running would be difficult, and that any hopes of military service were unrealistic. Maya had listened to every word, nodded politely, and then spent the next 12 years proving them wrong. She arrived at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado on a Monday morning in September, her duffel bag containing everything she owned, and her heart carrying dreams bigger than her 5'4" frame. The other recruits towered over her, their bodies already sculpted by years of preparation. She had trained too, spending countless hours in gyms, pools, and running tracks across her hometown in New Mexico. But standing among these giants, she felt like a child pretending to be a warrior. Basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, known simply as BUD/S, began with a reality that hit Maya like a freight train. The first physical screening test revealed what everyone could see but nobody wanted to say out loud. She was the weakest candidate in her class. While other recruits cranked out push-ups with mechanical precision, Maya struggled to reach the minimum requirements. The pull-up bar became her nemesis, her arms shaking as she fought to complete each repetition. The 4-mile timed runs that others finished with energy to spare left her vomiting behind the barracks, her rebuilt leg throbbing with every step. The instructors noticed immediately. Chief Petty Officer Martinez, a man whose weathered face had seen more combat than most people could imagine, watched Maya fail her 3rd rope climb attempt and shook his head. "Rodriguez," he called out, his voice carrying across the training ground. "You're holding up the entire class. Either figure it out or get out." Maya felt the eyes of 47 other recruits burning into her back. She had heard the whispers during mealtimes, the quiet conversations that stopped when she walked by. Some of the guys were decent enough, offering encouragement or training tips, but others made no attempt to hide their frustration. "She's going to get us all in trouble," she heard one recruit mutter during a particularly brutal conditioning session. Why did they even let her in? The question haunted Maya during the long, sleepless nights in the barracks. Why had they let her in? The Navy had opened SEAL training to women just 3 years earlier, and only a handful had even attempted the program. Maya knew she was carrying the weight of every woman who had dreamed of earning the Trident insignia, but knowing that only made the pressure worse. Every failure felt like she was failing not just herself, but every girl who had ever been told she wasn't strong enough. Week 2 brought Hell Week preparation, and Maya's performance went from bad to catastrophic. The LOB PT sessions, where teams of 6 carried massive telephone poles through various exercises, became exercises in public humiliation. Maya's team, initially supportive, grew increasingly frustrated as her inability to bear her share of the weight forced them to compensate. During one particularly grueling session, the log slipped from Maya's grip during an overhead press, nearly crushing the recruit beside her. "Rodriguez!" Chief Martinez's voice exploded across the beach. "Drop and give me 50. Your team gives me 25 for having to carry dead weight." Maya's face burned with shame as she dropped to the sand, her arms already exhausted from the previous exercises. Behind her, she could hear her teammates counting off their punishment push-ups, their breathing heavy with frustration and exhaustion. When she finished her 50, Maya stayed on the ground for a moment longer than necessary, sand sticking to her sweat-covered face, wondering if the instructors might be right about her. The pool exercises were worse. Despite years of swimming practice, Maya struggled with the drown-proofing sessions, where recruits had to perform various tasks underwater with their hands and feet bound. The first time she attempted the exercise, she panicked halfway through, her rebuilt leg cramping painfully as she tried to propel herself through the water. The instructor had to pull her out, her face blue and her chest heaving as she gasped for air on the pool deck. "Take 5 minutes, then get back in there," the instructor told her. But Maya could see the doubt in his eyes. She had seen that look before, from coaches who didn't think she belonged on their teams, from doctors who suggested she find a less demanding career path, from well-meaning friends who worried about her unrealistic expectations. That night, Maya sat alone on her bunk, staring at a letter from her mother. The envelope had arrived that morning, but she had been afraid to open it during the day, knowing that any display of emotion would be seen as another sign of weakness. Now, in the relative privacy of the darkened barracks, she read her mother's words of encouragement and support, and felt tears she couldn't afford to shed burning behind her eyes. Her bunkmate, a quiet recruit named Johnson from Ohio, rolled over and looked at her. "You okay, Rodriguez?" Maya folded the letter carefully. "Yeah, just tired." "You know," Johnson said quietly, "my sister tried out for the Olympic swim team 3 times. Never made it. But she said the trying was worth it, even when it broke her heart." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She appreciated Johnson's kindness, but she knew that her situation was different. Olympic swimmers could try again in 4 years. Navy SEAL candidates got 1 shot, and hers was slipping away with each failed exercise. The 3rd week brought the obstacle course, a series of challenges that had broken countless recruits over the years. Maya approached the first obstacle, a rope climb that stretched 30 feet into the California sky, with her jaw set in determination. She had practiced this climb hundreds of times in preparation, but practice was different from performance. Her hands were already raw from the morning's exercises, and her rebuilt leg ached from the previous day's punishment. She made it halfway up before her grip failed. Maya fell to the sand with a thud that seemed to echo across the entire training ground, landing awkwardly on her side. The impact knocked the wind out of her, and for a moment she lay there, staring up at the rope that might as well have been a mountain peak for all her ability to conquer it. "Time!" the instructor called. "Rodriguez, you're 2 minutes over. Hit the surf." The surf punishment meant running into the cold Pacific Ocean fully clothed, then rolling in the sand until every inch of her body was covered in grit. Maya stood slowly, her ribs aching from the fall, and jogged toward the waves. The water was shockingly cold, even for September, and by the time she emerged and rolled in the sand, she was shivering uncontrollably. She rejoined her class, looking like a walking sand sculpture, water dripping from her uniform and sand filling her boots. The other recruits avoided eye contact, not out of meanness, but out of the same reason people avoid looking at car accidents. Maya understood she was becoming a reminder of what failure looked like, and in a program designed to weed out the weak, nobody wanted to be reminded of their own vulnerabilities. The pattern continued throughout the week. Maya would attempt an exercise, fail to meet the standard, receive punishment, and then watch as her classmates completed the same challenges with varying degrees of success, but never the complete breakdown that seemed to follow her everywhere. During weapons training, she struggled with the weight of the equipment. During navigation exercises, her slower pace caused her team to miss checkpoints. During combat conditioning, her smaller frame made her an easy target in wrestling matches. By Thursday of week 3, Maya had been singled out so many times that the other recruits had stopped being surprised. Chief Martinez no longer showed frustration when she failed. Instead, he displayed the kind of resigned disappointment that was somehow worse than anger. During the evening hygiene inspection, he stopped at Maya's bunk and looked at her with eyes that had seen too many broken dreams to count. "Rodriguez," he said quietly, "I need to see you after lights out." Maya's stomach dropped. She knew what that conversation would be about. The writing had been on the wall for days, written in failed times and missed standards. As she lay in her bunk that night, listening to the steady breathing of recruits who belonged in ways she apparently didn't, Maya stared at the ceiling and tried to prepare herself for the inevitable. The conversation never came. Instead, Maya woke up Friday morning to the sound of boots hitting the barracks floor and Chief Martinez's voice booming through the building. "Up and at 'em. Beach PT in 20 minutes. Rodriguez, you're with me." Maya's heart sank. This was it. While the others prepared for morning exercises, she would be processing out of the program, packing her dreams away with her uniforms and heading back to New Mexico with her tail between her legs. She dressed quickly and followed Chief Martinez outside, where the California dawn was painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. But instead of heading toward the administrative buildings, Chief Martinez led her toward the beach, where the rest of the class was already forming up. Maya was confused but didn't dare ask questions. She fell in with her classmates, noting the way some of them glanced at her with expressions that mixed sympathy with relief. They had all been wondering when she would be dropped, and perhaps today would provide the answer. The morning's exercises were particularly brutal, even by Bud/S standards. Log PT, surf torture obstacle course runs, and beach sprints that left even the strongest recruits gasping in the sand. Maya gave everything she had, knowing it might be her last chance to prove herself, but her performance was the same as always. Last place finishes, missed standards, and the kind of struggle that made others grateful they weren't in her boots. As the session wound down, Chief Martinez called the class to formation. This was unusual. Normally, they would be dismissed to shower and change before the next training evolution. Maya felt her heart pounding as she stood at attention, sand still clinging to her soaked uniform, her rebuilt leg trembling with exhaustion. Today, Chief Martinez announced, his voice carrying across the beach, "We have a special guest." Maya looked up to see a figure approaching from the direction of the command buildings. Even from a distance, there was something about the way he moved that commanded attention. As he got closer, Maya could see the insignia on his uniform and the unmistakable bearing of someone who had not just survived SEAL training, but had thrived in it. Commander Jackson Hayes was a legend in the Navy SEAL community. 3 combat tours, countless successful missions, and a reputation for innovation that had changed how SEALs approached certain types of operations. He was also known for something else: his ability to see potential in places others missed, and his willingness to take risks on people that others had written off. Maya had heard stories about Commander Hayes during her preparation for Bud/S. He had been the one to recommend changes to the training program that had opened it to women. He had also been known to pull promising candidates aside for additional mentoring, though Maya had never imagined she would be considered promising by anyone's standards. As Commander Hayes approached the formation, Maya noticed that his eyes seemed to linger on each recruit, as if he was taking inventory not just of their physical condition, but of something deeper. When his gaze reached her, Maya felt a strange sensation, as if he was seeing something in her that she couldn't see in herself. "At ease," Commander Hayes said, and 48 recruits shifted into a more relaxed stance. "I've been watching your class for the past few weeks. Chief Martinez has been giving me regular reports on your progress, your challenges, and your potential." Maya felt her cheeks burning. She could only imagine what Chief Martinez's reports had said about her performance. The thought of her failures being discussed at the command level was almost more humiliating than the failures themselves. "Some of you," Commander Hayes continued, "are exceeding expectations. Some of you are meeting them. And some of you," his eyes moved directly to Maya, and she felt the gaze of every recruit in the formation following his. "Some of you are struggling with what we ask of you here." Maya wanted to disappear into the sand. This was it. She was about to be made an example of, dismissed in front of the entire class as a warning to others who might not take the training seriously enough. She braced herself for the humiliation, for the long walk back to the barracks to pack her things, for the phone call home that would break her parents' hearts. But Commander Hayes wasn't finished. "The question," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone lean in slightly, "is whether struggling means failing, or whether it means something else entirely." Maya looked up, surprised by the unexpected turn in his words. Commander Hayes was looking directly at her now, his expression unreadable, but somehow not dismissive. "Rodriguez," he said, and Maya's entire body snapped to attention. Front and center. Maya's legs felt like they were made of concrete as she stepped forward from the formation. Every grain of sand under her boots seemed to announce her movement to the 47 recruits watching her walk toward what she was certain would be her dismissal. Her rebuilt leg, which had been aching since the morning's exercises, now throbbed with each step, reminding her of all the reasons why everyone expected her to fail. Commander Hayes stood perfectly still as Maya approached, his weathered face giving away nothing about what he was thinking. Up close, she could see the small scars on his hands, the result of countless operations and training exercises that had tested him in ways she couldn't imagine. His uniform bore the insignia of achievements that Maya had only read about in military history books, and she felt smaller than ever standing in front of this living legend. "Do you know why you're here, Rodriguez?" Commander Hayes asked, his voice quiet enough that the other recruits had to strain to hear. Maya's mouth was dry as sand. "Sir, I believe it's because I've been failing to meet the standards required for this program. That's what Chief Martinez's reports say." Commander Hayes replied. 3 weeks of missed times, failed exercises, and performance that puts you at the bottom of every measurable category we track. He paused, letting the words settle over the formation like a heavy blanket. But that's not why I asked you to step forward. Maya blinked, confused. If her poor performance wasn't the reason for this public attention, then what was? Commander Hayes turned slightly, addressing the entire class while keeping Maya in front of him. How many of you have watched Rodriguez fail an exercise and felt relief that it wasn't you? Several hands went up immediately. Then more followed as recruits realized that honesty was apparently what was being asked for. Soon, nearly every hand in the formation was raised, including some of the recruits who had been kindest to Maya during her struggles. How many of you have thought that she's making the rest of you look bad, or that she doesn't belong here? Again, hands went up. Fewer this time, but still a significant number. Maya felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment, but she kept her eyes focused straight ahead, just as she had been taught. And how many of you have quit something challenging because it got too difficult, because the failure became too embarrassing, or because you decided it wasn't worth the pain? This time, nearly every hand went up, though more slowly and with obvious reluctance. Maya noticed that even some of the strongest recruits raised their hands, the ones who seemed to breeze through every physical challenge. Commander Hayes nodded. That's what I thought. Because that's normal. That's what most people do when faced with repeated failure and public humiliation. They quit. They find something easier. They preserve their dignity by walking away before the breaking point. He turned back to Maya, and she saw something in his eyes that she hadn't expected. Not pity, not disappointment, but something that looked almost like respect. Rodriguez has failed more exercises in 3 weeks than some of you will fail in the entire program. She has been publicly corrected, punished, and humiliated more times than I can count. Every morning she wakes up knowing that she will probably fail again, that she will be the slowest, the weakest, the one holding everyone else back. Commander Hayes paused, letting his words sink in. And every morning she shows up anyway. Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite identify. It wasn't pride exactly, because she still felt the sting of every failure, every missed standard, every disappointed look from instructors. But it was something. Chief Martinez, Commander Hayes called out. How many recruits have we lost from this class so far? 12, sir, Chief Martinez replied. 7 during the first week, 3 during the second, and 2 this week. And what were their reasons for leaving? Medical drops, performance failures, and voluntary withdrawals, sir. The voluntary withdrawals, Commander Hayes continued, were all recruits who were performing better than Rodriguez. Recruits who could have continued, who were meeting standards, but who decided that the program was too demanding, too unforgiving, too difficult to be worth continuing. Maya saw where this was going, but she didn't dare believe it. Rodriguez, Commander Hayes said, turning his full attention back to her. You have demonstrated something that cannot be taught, cannot be trained, and cannot be measured on any physical fitness test. You have shown us what it looks like to refuse to quit, even when quitting would be the rational choice. Even when everyone expects you to quit. Even when you have every reasonable excuse to walk away. The formation was completely silent now, 47 recruits and several instructors hanging on every word. But, Commander Hayes continued, and Maya's heart sank as she prepared for the inevitable reversal, demonstrating heart is not enough to become a Navy SEAL. Physical standards exist for a reason. Mission requirements don't adjust themselves based on determination. If you cannot perform the tasks required of you, then your refusal to quit becomes a liability to your teammates. Maya nodded, understanding that this was the end. She had been given a moment of recognition, an acknowledgement that her effort meant something, but the reality remained unchanged. She wasn't strong enough, fast enough, or skilled enough to belong here. So, Commander Hayes said, I'm giving you a choice, and it's a choice that no other recruit in this program has ever been offered. Maya looked up, surprised again. You can continue with your current training schedule, following the same program as everyone else, and almost certainly wash out within the next 2 weeks. Your performance suggests that you will not be able to meet the minimum standards for Hell Week, and even if you somehow survive it, the advanced training phases will present challenges that your current physical capabilities cannot overcome. Maya felt her dreams crumbling, but she forced herself to keep listening. Or, Commander Hayes said, and the word hung in the air like a lifeline, you can accept a special training protocol that I am personally designing for you. It will be harder than anything anyone else in this class will face. It will require you to train longer, push harder, and endure more than should be humanly possible. It will mean extra hours every day, additional exercises that others don't have to complete, and a level of scrutiny that will make your current situation look like a vacation. Maya stared at him, not understanding. The protocol will last 8 weeks, Commander Hayes continued. If you can complete it, if you can meet the standards we set specifically for you, then you will rejoin your class for the final phases of training. If you cannot, then you will be dropped from the program, just as you would be under normal circumstances. The formation stirred slightly, recruits glancing at each other with expressions of confusion and curiosity. Nothing like this had ever happened before in the history of Bud/S. Why? Maya asked, the word coming out before she could stop herself. Sir, I mean, why would you offer me this opportunity? Commander Hayes smiled for the first time since his arrival, an expression that transformed his weathered face. Because in 3 combat tours I have learned that the most dangerous enemy a SEAL can face is not enemy fire, not impossible missions, not equipment failure. The most dangerous enemy is the voice in your head that tells you to quit when things get too hard. And you, Rodriguez, seem to have found a way to defeat that enemy. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice so that only she could hear. I have seen operators with perfect physical scores freeze under pressure. I have seen recruits who dominated every training exercise crumble when real lives were on the line. But I have never seen anyone absorb as much failure as you have and keep coming back for more. That tells me something about your character that no fitness test could ever reveal. Maya felt tears threatening to break free, but she blinked them back. What would this special protocol involve, sir? Things that will make your current training look easy, Commander Hayes replied. Extended underwater sessions to build your lung capacity, weighted carries that will strengthen your frame, mental conditioning that will prepare you for levels of stress you cannot imagine. And all of it will happen while your classmates are sleeping, eating, or relaxing. He gestured toward the formation of recruits who were watching this unprecedented conversation with fascination. They will continue with standard training. You will do everything they do, plus 4 additional hours of specialized conditioning every day. You will wake up earlier, go to bed later, and push yourself beyond anything you thought possible. And if I fail? Maya asked. Then you will fail having attempted something no one else has ever attempted. You will fail knowing that you pushed yourself to the absolute limit of human endurance. And you will fail with the knowledge that you never gave up, even when everyone expected you to. Maya looked back at her classmates, most of whom were staring at her with expressions of amazement and confusion. She saw Johnson, her kind bunkmate, giving her an encouraging nod. She saw some of the stronger recruits who had been frustrated with her performance, looking at her with something that might have been respect. And she saw Chief Martinez, whose disappointed expression had been replaced with something that looked like curiosity. There is one condition, Commander Hayes added. This offer expires right now. You cannot think about it, discuss it with anyone, or take time to weigh your options. You either accept immediately, committing yourself to 8 weeks of training that will break most people, or you continue with the standard program and almost certainly wash out within days. Maya's rebuilt leg was still throbbing, her arms were exhausted from the morning's exercises, and every rational part of her mind was screaming that this was impossible. She was already failing the regular program. How could she possibly succeed at something even more demanding? But as she stood there on the beach, sand in her boots and sweat drying on her uniform, Maya remembered every person who had told her that her dreams were unrealistic. She remembered the doctors who said she would never run properly. She remembered the coaches who cut her from teams. She remembered the well-meaning friends who suggested she find something more suitable. And she remembered the 12-year-old girl who had watched a documentary about Navy SEALs and decided that impossible was just another word for challenging. Sir, Maya said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. I accept. Commander Hayes nodded once, a sharp movement that seemed to seal something important. Chief Martinez, Rodriguez is now on a modified training schedule, effective immediately. Her day starts at 0400 hours, 30 minutes before everyone else. Her specialized conditioning begins after evening chow and continues until 2200 hours. She participates in all regular training evolutions with her class, plus the additional protocol I will outline for you separately. Understood, sir, Chief Martinez replied, though his expression suggested he thought Commander Hayes might have lost his mind. Commander Hayes turned back to the formation. The rest of you will continue with standard training. You will not assist Rodriguez with her additional exercises. You will not modify your own performance to accommodate her struggles. This is her challenge to face alone, and your job is to focus on your own development as potential Navy SEALs. He began walking back toward the command buildings, then stopped and turned around. Rodriguez, report to Building 618 at 1500 hours today for your first specialized session. Bring workout gear and prepare yourself for something you have never experienced before. As Commander Hayes disappeared into the distance, Maya felt the weight of 47 stairs pressing down on her. The formation was dismissed, and recruits began moving toward the barracks, but several stopped to look at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Johnson was the first to approach. "Holy shit, Rodriguez," he said quietly. "I don't know whether to congratulate you or pray for you. Both might be appropriate," Maya replied, suddenly realizing what she had committed herself to. Over the next few hours, as word of the unprecedented arrangement spread through the base, Maya began to understand the magnitude of what she had accepted. Extra training meant less sleep, less recovery time, and less opportunity to address the weaknesses that were already making the standard program nearly impossible for her to handle. But it also meant something else: hope. For the first time since arriving at Bud/S, Maya had a path forward that didn't end with her ringing the bell that signaled surrender. It was a path that would demand everything she had and more, but it was a path nonetheless. That afternoon, as Maya prepared to report to Building 618, she caught her reflection in the barracks mirror. She looked exhausted, beaten down by weeks of failure and public humiliation. But behind the fatigue and the doubt, she saw something else: the same determined 12-year-old who had decided to pursue the impossible. "Rodriguez," Chief Martinez called from the doorway, "time to go see what Commander Hayes has cooked up for you." Maya grabbed her gear bag and headed toward the door, feeling the eyes of her classmates following her. Some looked sympathetic, others looked relieved that they weren't in her position, and a few looked almost envious of the special attention she was receiving. As she walked across the base toward Building 618, Maya realized that her real training was just beginning. Everything she had experienced so far had been preparation for whatever waited behind that door. The failures, the humiliation, the physical and mental exhaustion, all of it had been leading to this moment. She thought about the choice Commander Hayes had given her, and she realized it hadn't really been a choice at all. From the moment she had decided to pursue Navy SEAL training, from the moment she had refused to let childhood injuries define her limitations, she had been walking toward this doorway. Building 618 loomed ahead, a nondescript structure that was about to become the center of Maya's universe for the next 8 weeks. She took a deep breath, tasted the salt air of the Pacific, and prepared to discover what she was truly capable of when pushed beyond every reasonable limit. The door opened before she could knock, and Commander Hayes stood waiting for her, his expression serious but not unkind. "Are you ready to find out who you really are, Rodriguez?" he asked. Maya stepped across the threshold, leaving behind the version of herself that had been failing every drill, and prepared to meet the person she was about to become. Building 618 was unlike any training facility Maya had ever seen. The main room contained equipment she didn't recognize, tanks filled with water of varying depths and temperatures, and devices that looked more like medieval torture implements than fitness tools. The walls were lined with monitors displaying biometric data, and the air hummed with the sound of machinery that seemed designed for purposes she couldn't imagine. Commander Hayes led her to a small office overlooking the main floor, where a thick folder sat waiting on a metal desk. "Before we begin," he said, settling into a chair across from her, "I need you to understand exactly what you're agreeing to. This isn't just harder training. This is a complete reconstruction of who you are as a person." Maya nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what he meant. The human body can adapt to extraordinary stresses, but only if those stresses are applied systematically and progressively. What we're going to do is break down every system in your body and rebuild it stronger. Your cardiovascular capacity, your muscular endurance, your mental resilience, your pain tolerance, all of it will be systematically destroyed and reconstructed. He opened the folder, revealing pages of data that looked more like medical charts than training schedules. Your current baseline measurements put you in the bottom 10th percentile of all Bud/S candidates we've ever tested. Your VO2 max, your strength-to-weight ratios, your recovery times, all of them indicate that you shouldn't be able to complete even the basic requirements of this program. Maya felt her hopes beginning to sink again. If the data showed she was hopeless, then what was the point of this elaborate setup? "But," Commander Hayes continued, "these measurements only tell us about your current state. They don't tell us anything about your adaptive capacity, your pain threshold, or your psychological breaking point. And after watching you for 3 weeks, I believe those unmeasurable qualities might be more important than the data suggests." He pulled out a series of photographs showing before and after images of previous SEAL candidates. These are recruits who completed modified training protocols under my supervision. Not the same protocol I'm designing for you, that's entirely new, but similar approaches for people who needed specialized attention. Maya studied the images, seeing transformations that seemed almost impossible. Bodies that had been reshaped, faces that showed a confidence and hardness that hadn't been there before. The difference between these success stories and the failures wasn't physical potential, Commander Hayes explained. It was willingness to endure systematic destruction of everything they thought they knew about their own limitations.
He stood and walked to the window overlooking the main training floor.
Your first session begins in 5 minutes. For the next 8 weeks, you will report here every day at 1500 hours. Your sessions will last exactly 3 hours, followed by a 1-hour recovery period that includes medical monitoring and nutritional support. Maya looked down at the training floor, where she could see devices that she was certain were designed to inflict controlled suffering. What exactly will I be doing down there? Week 1 focuses on cardiovascular reconstruction, Commander Hayes replied. We're going to put your heart and lungs under stress levels that will seem impossible to survive, then teach your body to adapt. Week 2 adds strength conditioning using methods that will challenge every muscle fiber you possess. Week 3 introduces psychological stress protocols that will test your mental breaking point. He turned back to face her, his expression completely serious. By week 4, you will be questioning your sanity. By week 5, you will be begging to quit. By week 6, you will discover that your previous understanding of pain was laughably inadequate. And by week 8, if you survive, you will have become someone entirely different from the person sitting in this chair right now. Maya felt her heart racing, but she forced herself to speak calmly. And you believe this will prepare me to complete the standard Bud/S program? I believe this will prepare you to do things that will make the standard Bud/S program look like a warm-up exercise, Commander Hayes replied. The question is whether you can survive the process of becoming that person. A technician entered the office, carrying a clipboard and what looked like medical monitoring equipment. Sir, we're ready for the baseline testing. Commander Hayes nodded. Rodriguez, this is Dr. Sarah Chen, our physiological specialist. She'll be monitoring your progress throughout the program and ensuring that we push you to your absolute limits without causing permanent damage. Doctor. Chen was a small woman with an intensity that reminded Maya of her high school physics teacher, someone who approached complex problems with scientific precision. We'll be taking detailed measurements before and after each session, she explained, attaching sensors to Maya's arms and chest. Heart rate, oxygen consumption, lactic acid levels, stress hormone production, everything we need to track your adaptation to the protocols. Maya submitted to the testing, feeling increasingly like a laboratory subject rather than a military candidate. But as the sensors were attached and the measurements began, she realized that this level of attention meant that Commander Hayes was serious about her success. This wasn't a token gesture or a way to let her down easy. This was a genuine attempt to transform her into someone capable of meeting the standards she had been failing. Baseline cardiovascular function is consistent with previous measurements. Doctor, Chen announced, reading data from her monitors. Resting heart rate elevated, probably due to anxiety. Recovery times are in the bottom 20% of normal ranges. But, she paused, studying the readouts more closely, stress response indicators are interesting. Her cortisol levels suggest higher than average resilience to psychological pressure. Commander Hayes smiled slightly. That matches what I observed during her 3 weeks of constant failure. Most people in her position would have quit, not just from the program, but from the testing situation itself. The fact that she's still here, still willing to try something even more challenging, tells us something important about her psychological makeup. Dr. Chen finished the baseline testing and packed up her equipment. We'll repeat these measurements after each session. If any indicators suggest that we're approaching dangerous levels, we'll modify the protocols accordingly. Commander Hayes stood. Time to see what you're made of, Rodriguez. Follow me. Maya followed him down a set of stairs to the main training floor, where the equipment looked even more intimidating up close. The first station appeared to be some kind of underwater treadmill, with clear walls that would allow observers to watch as someone ran submerged in several feet of water. Cardiovascular reconstruction begins with oxygen debt conditioning, Commander Hayes explained, handing Maya a diving mask and snorkel. You're going to run on this treadmill while submerged, forcing your cardiovascular system to function under extreme oxygen limitations. Maya looked at the device with growing apprehension. For how long?
Until your body adapts or you lose consciousness, Commander Hayes replied matter-of-factly.
Dr. Chen will be monitoring your vitals continuously and will pull you out before any permanent damage occurs. But you need to understand that consciousness is optional for adaptation to occur. Maya put on the diving gear and stepped into the tank, feeling the cold water rise around her body. The treadmill was already moving at a pace that would have been challenging on dry land, and she hadn't even started dealing with the resistance of the water and the limitation of breathing through a snorkel. "Begin," Commander Hayes commanded. Maya started running, immediately feeling the burn in her legs as she fought against the water resistance. The snorkel made breathing difficult, forcing her to focus intensely on each inhalation and exhalation. Within 2 minutes, her rebuilt leg was screaming in protest, and her heart rate was climbing toward levels that would normally force her to stop. But stopping wasn't an option. Dr. Chen was calling out readings that Maya couldn't understand, and Commander Hayes was watching with the kind of focused attention that suggested this was a critical test of her commitment to the program. 5 minutes in, Maya felt like she was drowning while running, her body demanding more oxygen than the snorkel could provide. Her vision started to blur slightly, and she could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Every instinct told her to signal for help, to get out of the tank, to breathe normally. Instead, she kept running. 8 minutes in, something strange began to happen. The panic in her chest started to recede, replaced by a kind of focused determination that she had never experienced before. Her body seemed to be finding ways to function with limited oxygen, and while the effort was still tremendous, it no longer felt impossible. "Heart rate stabilizing," Dr. Chen called out. "Oxygen efficiency improving. She's adapting." Maya ran for 12 more minutes, her body moving through what felt like a different kind of consciousness. The pain was still there, but it had become background information rather than an emergency signal. When Commander Hayes finally signaled for her to stop, Maya stepped out of the tank, feeling like she had discovered something important about herself. "How do you feel?" Dr. Chen asked, immediately beginning post-exercise measurements. "Different," Maya replied, surprised by the truthfulness of the answer. "Like I just learned something I didn't know before." Commander Hayes nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what adaptation feels like. Your body just figured out how to function under conditions that would have been impossible 20 minutes ago." The session continued with a series of exercises that pushed Maya's cardiovascular system in ways she had never experienced. High-intensity intervals performed while wearing a restrictive breathing mask, resistance training conducted while submerged in ice-cold water, mental focus tasks performed while her body was under extreme physical stress. By the time the 3 hours were complete, Maya was exhausted in ways that made her previous training seem gentle, but she was also exhilarated by the realization that she had completed challenges that would have seemed impossible at the beginning of the session. Dr. Chen reviewed the post-exercise measurements with Commander Hayes while Maya sat wrapped in warming blankets, her body shivering as it recovered from the multiple stresses it had just endured. "Adaptation indicators are exceptional," Dr. Chen reported. "Heart rate recovery, lactate clearance, psychological stress markers, all showing rapid positive changes. If she can maintain this response pattern, the physiological improvements should be dramatic." Commander Hayes approached Maya, who was slowly beginning to feel human again. "How was that compared to your regular Bud/S training?" Maya considered the question carefully. "Harder in some ways, but also more focused, I guess. Like every exercise had a specific purpose instead of just being a test I was supposed to pass or fail." "That's exactly right," Commander Hayes replied. "Everything we did today was designed to create specific adaptations in your body's systems. Regular training tests whether you can already do something. This training teaches your body to do things it couldn't do before." As Maya prepared to leave Building 618, Commander Hayes handed her a nutrition plan and recovery protocol that was more detailed than anything she had ever seen. "Follow this exactly," he instructed. "Your body is going to need specific support to handle what we're putting it through. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, stretching. All of it becomes critical when you're operating at these stress levels." Maya walked back to the barracks feeling like she had just survived something significant. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was clearer than it had been since arriving at Bud/S. For the first time, she had a training plan that was designed for her specific needs rather than expecting her to somehow meet standards that her current capabilities couldn't reach. That evening, as she sat in the barracks following her new recovery protocol, Johnson approached with obvious curiosity. "So how was the special training?" Maya tried to find words to describe what she had experienced. "Imagine everything we've been doing in regular training, but designed by someone who actually wants you to succeed, instead of someone trying to weed you out." Other recruits gathered around, their expressions mixing curiosity with concern. Maya realized that her experience in Building 618 was as foreign to them as it had been to her. "Are you going to be able to keep up with regular training too?" asked Williams, one of the stronger recruits who had been supportive during Maya's struggles. I guess we'll find out tomorrow, Maya replied, though she was wondering the same thing herself. The specialized training had been designed to improve her performance, but it had also been exhausting in ways that might affect her ability to handle the regular program. The next morning brought the answer. Maya woke up at 0400 hours, 30 minutes before the rest of her class, feeling surprisingly energetic despite the previous day's intensive session. Her rebuilt leg, which usually ached for hours after training, felt stronger than it had in weeks. The morning's regular training evolution was a 4-mile conditioning run, the same type of exercise where Maya had consistently finished last and often required medical attention afterward. As the class formed up for the run, Maya felt a familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach, but underneath it was something new. Curiosity about whether the previous day's training had created any noticeable changes. Chief Martinez gave the command to begin, and 46 recruits started running at the pace that had always left Maya struggling to keep up. But as Maya fell into rhythm beside her classmates, she realized that something fundamental had changed. The pace that had always felt crushing now felt manageable. Her breathing was controlled, her rebuilt leg was responding without the usual sharp pains, and her overall sense of effort was dramatically different from what she had experienced in previous runs. By the 2-mile mark, Maya was still keeping pace with the main group, instead of falling behind into the struggling stragglers. By 3 miles, she was actually moving up through the formation, passing recruits who had always been faster than her. And as they approached the finish line, Maya realized with amazement that she was going to finish in the middle of the pack, instead of limping in last. Chief Martinez checked his stopwatch as Maya crossed the finish line, then checked it again with an expression of disbelief. Rodriguez, what was your time on the last PT run? Maya tried to remember. I think it was around 32 minutes, Chief. 27:43, Chief Martinez announced.
You just improved your time by almost 5 minutes. The improvement was so dramatic that several recruits looked at Maya with expressions of suspicion, as if she might have somehow cheated or taken a shortcut.
But Maya knew exactly what had happened. One session of specialized training had created adaptations that regular training had failed to produce in 3 weeks. Over the next several days, as Maya continued her dual schedule of regular training and afternoon specialized sessions, the improvements continued to accumulate. Her rope climbing times dropped dramatically. Her swimming performance improved to the point where she was no longer the automatic last-place finisher. Her performance in obstacle course exercises became respectable and occasionally even competitive. More importantly, her psychological relationship with failure began to change. Instead of approaching each exercise with the expectation of struggle and humiliation, Maya began to approach them as opportunities to test the adaptations she was developing. When she did fail an exercise, which still happened regularly, it felt like useful information rather than devastating confirmation of her inadequacy. The other recruits began to notice the changes, and their responses were mixed. Some, like Johnson and Williams, were genuinely happy to see Maya's improvement and began including her in conversations and activities that had previously excluded her. Others seemed confused or even resentful, as if her improvement somehow diminished their own achievements. It's not fair, Maya overheard one recruit complaining to another. She's getting special treatment that the rest of us don't get. If we all had personal trainers and specialized equipment, we'd all be improving that fast. Maya understood the complaint, but she also knew it missed the point. The specialized training wasn't making things easier for her, it was making them much harder. While her classmates were resting and recovering in the evening, Maya was enduring 3-hour sessions that pushed her body and mind to breaking points. The improvements were coming at a cost that most people wouldn't be willing to pay. By the end of her first week in the program, Maya had experienced a transformation that went beyond physical improvements. Her confidence was returning, not the fragile confidence of someone hoping to avoid failure, but the solid confidence of someone who had discovered her capacity to adapt and grow under pressure. Commander Hayes seemed pleased with her progress when she reported for her second week of specialized training. The improvements in your regular training performance have been noted, he said, but I want you to understand that week 1 was just preparation. Starting today, we're going to find out what you're really capable of. Maya looked at the new equipment that had been set up in the training bay, devices that made the previous week's challenges look simple by comparison. What's different about week 2? Commander Hayes smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring expression. Week 1 taught your body to adapt. Week 2 is going to teach your mind to endure. Week 2 of Maya's specialized training began with what Commander Hayes called stress inoculation. a series of exercises designed to teach her mind to function clearly under conditions that would normally cause panic or paralysis. The training bay had been reconfigured overnight, filled with equipment that looked more like psychological evaluation tools than fitness machines. The difference between Navy SEALs and other military personnel isn't physical capability, Commander Hayes explained as Maya surveyed the new setup. Elite soldiers in every branch can meet physical standards. What separates SEALs is the ability to think clearly and make correct decisions when your body is under extreme stress, when you're exhausted, scared, confused, or in pain. Maya nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what that meant in practical terms. Today, we're going to put you in situations where your body is screaming for you to quit, where every instinct tells you that you're in danger, and we're going to teach you to solve complex problems while ignoring those signals. Commander Hayes continued, it's going to be uncomfortable in ways that physical exercise never is. Dr. Chen approached with a new array of monitoring equipment, more sophisticated than what Maya had seen during her first week. We'll be tracking neurological responses today, she explained, attaching sensors to Maya's temples and the back of her neck. Brainwave patterns, stress hormone releases, cognitive processing speeds. We need to understand how your mind responds to extreme stress, so we can design appropriate conditioning protocols. The first exercise looked deceptively simple. A puzzle-solving station set up next to what appeared to be a controlled drowning simulator. Maya would be submerged in cold water with limited air access while attempting to solve increasingly complex logic problems displayed on a waterproof screen. The key, Commander Hayes explained, is learning to compartmentalize. Your body will be convinced that it's drowning, that you're in mortal danger, that you need to surface immediately. Your job is to ignore those signals and focus entirely on the cognitive tasks. Maya put on the breathing apparatus and lowered herself into the tank, immediately feeling the shock of the cold water against her skin. The logic problems began as simple pattern recognition exercises, but as her oxygen became more limited and her body temperature dropped, the puzzles became more complex. Within minutes, Maya's body was sending emergency signals to her brain. Her chest felt tight, her extremities were going numb from the cold, and every survival instinct she possessed was screaming at her to surface. But the puzzle on the screen required her complete attention, a mathematical sequence that she needed to solve before she could move to the next level. The fascinating thing was that her mind seemed capable of operating on two separate levels simultaneously. Part of her consciousness was monitoring her body's distress signals, while another part was working through the logic problems with surprising clarity. It was as if the extreme physical stress was actually sharpening her mental focus rather than diminishing it. Cognitive performance holding steady, Dr. Chen reported. Stress hormone levels are elevated, but within acceptable ranges. She's maintaining problem-solving efficiency despite significant physiological distress. Maya completed 6 increasingly complex puzzles while submerged, her body shivering uncontrollably and her lungs burning from the limited oxygen access. When she finally surfaced, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment that went beyond anything she had experienced during purely physical training. How did that feel? Commander Hayes asked as Maya warmed herself with heated blankets. Strange, Maya replied, surprised by her own answer. Like I discovered that my brain works differently when my body is in crisis. Almost like the stress made me think more clearly instead of less clearly. Commander Hayes nodded approvingly. That's exactly the response we're looking for. Most people's cognitive abilities deteriorate under physical stress. SEALs need to think most clearly when conditions are most dangerous. The session continued with exercises that combined physical challenges with cognitive tasks, each one designed to teach Maya's mind to function independently of her body's distress signals. She solved navigation problems while hanging from a rope with her arms burning from fatigue. She completed memory exercises while running on a treadmill set to speeds that left her gasping for breath. She answered tactical questions while immersed in ice water that made her teeth chatter uncontrollably. Each exercise revealed the same phenomenon. Maya's ability to compartmentalize her consciousness, allowing her mind to work on complex problems while her body endured conditions that would normally make concentration impossible. Dr. Chen was fascinated by the monitoring data. Her neurological responses are unusual, she reported to Commander Hayes during a brief break. Most subjects show degraded cognitive performance under these stress levels, but her problem-solving speed actually improves when physical distress reaches certain thresholds. That explains why she kept showing up despite weeks of failure and regular training, Commander Hayes replied. Her mind interprets physical stress as a challenge to overcome rather than a signal to retreat. By the end of week 2, Maya had developed what Commander Hayes called stress immunity, the ability to maintain mental clarity and decision-making capability under conditions that would overwhelm most people. But more importantly, She had discovered something about herself that changed how she approached every challenge. The improvement in her regular Bud/S performance became even more dramatic. During a particularly grueling obstacle course evolution, Maya found herself not just keeping up with the stronger recruits, but actually helping to pace the group and encourage struggling classmates. Chief Martinez watched her performance with an expression that had evolved from skepticism to genuine interest. "Rodriguez," he called after the exercise, "your improvement over the past 2 weeks has been unprecedented. What's different?" Maya considered how to explain the mental transformation she had experienced. "I guess I learned that being uncomfortable doesn't mean I'm failing, it just means I'm working." The response seemed to satisfy Chief Martinez, but Maya knew it was more complex than that. The specialized training had taught her that her body's distress signals were information rather than instructions. Pain, fatigue, fear, and discomfort were simply data points that she could acknowledge without allowing them to control her actions. Week 3 brought what Commander Hayes called breaking point identification. The training sessions focused on finding Maya's absolute limits in various categories, then teaching her to function slightly beyond those limits. "Everyone has breaking points," Commander Hayes explained as Maya prepared for her first Week 3 session. "The difference between those who succeed and those who fail isn't the location of those breaking points. It's what happens when you reach them." The exercises were designed to push Maya past her breaking points in controlled environments where the consequences of failure were manageable, but the experience was authentic. She was required to solve complex problems while experiencing simulated combat stress. She had to maintain physical performance while dealing with sensory overload that made concentration nearly impossible. She was forced to continue swimming after her muscles had reached complete exhaustion. Each time Maya reached what felt like an absolute limit, Commander Hayes would guide her through techniques for continuing beyond that point, not by ignoring the limit or pretending it didn't exist, but by accepting it as a starting point rather than an ending point. "When you think you can't continue," Commander Hayes taught her, "that's when the real work begins. Everything before that point is just preparation." Maya began to understand that her 3 weeks of failure in regular Bud/S training hadn't been wasted time. Every failed rope climb, every last place finish, every public humiliation had been preparation for learning how to continue when continuation seemed impossible. By week 4, Maya's regular training performance had improved to the point where she was consistently finishing in the top half of her class. More importantly, she had become a source of encouragement and support for other recruits who were struggling. Her experience with failure and recovery gave her credibility with classmates who were facing their own breaking points. Johnson approached her one evening after a particularly brutal training day. "Rodriguez, I think I'm going to quit," he confided. "I made it through Hell Week, but these advanced evolutions are breaking me. I can't keep up anymore." Maya looked at her friend, remembering her own conversations with despair over the past weeks. "What makes you think you can't keep up?" "I failed the underwater navigation exercise 3 times today," Johnson replied. "Chief Martinez is losing patience with me. I'm holding back my team." Maya recognized the thought patterns that had once dominated her own internal dialogue. "Johnson, do you remember when you told me about your sister who tried out for the Olympics?" Johnson nodded. "You said the trying was worth it even when it broke her heart." "But what if the trying wasn't just about the Olympics? What if the trying was about discovering who she really was?" Johnson looked confused, so Maya continued. "I spent 3 weeks failing every exercise, being the worst performer in our class, and thinking I was learning that I wasn't strong enough. But I was actually learning something else. I was learning that I could keep trying, even when trying seemed pointless." "That's different," Johnson protested. "You had that special training program." "You had help." Maya shook her head. "The special training didn't make me stronger. It showed me that I was already stronger than I thought. The strength to keep trying after repeated failure, that was already there. The training just taught me how to recognize it." Johnson sat quietly for a moment, considering Maya's words. "So you think I should keep trying even though I'm failing?" "I think you should try once more and pay attention to why you're trying," Maya replied. "Not because you might succeed, but because the person who keeps trying after failure is someone worth becoming." The conversation reminded Maya of how much she had changed over the past month. The recruit who had stood in front of Commander Hayes expecting to be dismissed was barely recognizable in the person she had become. But the change wasn't just about improved performance or physical capability. It was about a fundamental shift in how she understood the relationship between effort and outcome. Week 5 of the specialized training introduced what Commander Hayes called mission simulation under extreme duress. Maya was presented with complex tactical scenarios that required her to make life-and-death decisions while her body and mind were under severe stress. The scenarios were incredibly realistic, using virtual reality technology combined with physical stresses to create situations that felt genuinely dangerous. Maya found herself navigating through simulated combat zones while dealing with simulated injuries, making tactical decisions while experiencing simulated equipment failures, and leading simulated teams while under simulated enemy fire. What surprised her was how natural it felt. The mental tools she had developed during the previous weeks of training translated perfectly to these complex scenarios. She could compartmentalize the physical and psychological stress while focusing on the tactical requirements of each situation. Her decision-making under pressure is exceptional. Dr. became, Chen reported to Commander Hayes after one particularly challenging session. She's making correct choices faster under high stress than most people make them under normal conditions. Commander Hayes nodded. That's what we expected. The question now is whether she can maintain that performance when the stress is real instead of simulated. Maya's transformation was becoming visible to everyone around her. Her posture had changed, her voice had gained confidence, and her interactions with other recruits reflected a new kind of leadership. Chief Martinez began using her as an example during training evolutions, pointing out her technique and mental approach to struggling recruits. 6 weeks ago, Rodriguez was the weakest performer in this class, Chief Martinez announced during a training brief. Today, she's one of our strongest. The difference wasn't talent or physical gifts. The difference was refusing to quit when quitting would have been reasonable. Maya felt embarrassed by the attention but also proud of the transformation she had undergone. More importantly, she began to understand that her improvement was inspiring other recruits to push past their own perceived limitations. Week 6 brought the most challenging phase of Maya's specialized training, what Commander Hayes called authentic failure management. Instead of simulated stress, Maya was placed in real situations where failure would have real consequences, though not life-threatening ones. She was required to lead actual training evolutions with her classmates, where poor performance would result in genuine punishment for everyone involved. She had to complete solo navigation exercises in challenging terrain, where mistakes would result in genuine danger and discomfort. She was given responsibility for equipment and logistics that would genuinely impact the training of other recruits if she failed to perform adequately. The psychological pressure was more intense than anything she had experienced during the simulated exercises. When the consequences of failure are artificial, there's a part of your mind that knows you're safe. When the consequences are real, even if relatively minor, every decision carries authentic weight. Maya discovered that her mental training translated perfectly to real-world pressure. The techniques she had learned for compartmentalizing stress and maintaining cognitive clarity under duress worked just as effectively when the stakes were genuine. During one evolution, Maya was given command of a 6-person team tasked with completing a complex navigation and logistics exercise. If her team failed to meet the time standards, all 6 members would receive significant punishment that would impact their standing in the program. As Maya led her team through the challenging exercise, she realized that the responsibility for other people's success created a different kind of pressure than she had ever experienced. But instead of being paralyzed by that pressure, she found it clarifying. The stakes made every decision feel important, which helped her focus completely on making correct choices. Her team completed the exercise with time to spare, and Maya felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond personal achievement. She had been trusted with genuine responsibility and had proven worthy of that trust. Leadership under pressure is the final test, Commander Hayes explained after Maya's successful completion of the week. 6 challenges. Anyone can lead when things are going well. SEALs need to lead when everything is falling apart. As Maya entered the final phase of her specialized training, she realized that she had become someone entirely different from the recruit who had accepted Commander Hayes' challenge 7 weeks earlier. But more than that, she had discovered capabilities within herself that she had never suspected existed. The 8-week transformation was nearing completion, and Maya was beginning to understand that the most important changes weren't physical or even mental. They were changes in how she understood the relationship between challenge and growth, between failure and progress, between individual capability and unlimited potential. Week 7 would bring the final tests, the challenges that would determine whether she had truly earned the right to rejoin her class for the final phases of SEAL training. But Maya was no longer worried about passing or failing those tests. She was curious to discover what they would teach her about who she had become. Week 7 arrived with an atmosphere of anticipation that Maya could feel throughout the base. Word of her specialized training program had spread beyond her immediate class, and instructors from other phases of SEAL training had begun observing her regular performance with curiosity. The unprecedented experiment was nearing its conclusion, and everyone wanted to see whether Commander Hayes' radical approach would produce the results he had promised. Maya reported to Building 618 on Monday morning, feeling different from any other day of the program. The nervousness and uncertainty that had characterized her early weeks had been replaced by something she could only describe as readiness. Not confidence that she would succeed, but complete acceptance of whatever challenges lay ahead. Commander Hayes was waiting with what appeared to be a new team of evaluators, men and women Maya didn't recognize, but whose bearing and insignia indicated they were senior SEAL operators. Rodriguez, Commander Hayes said, "This week is your final evaluation. These officers represent the community you're trying to join. They're here to determine whether the person you've become belongs in that community." Maya looked at the evaluation team, recognizing the weight of the moment. These weren't trainers or instructors whose job was to help her improve. These were operational SEALs whose job was to make an honest assessment of her capabilities and potential. "The evaluation will last 7 days," one of the evaluators explained, a woman whose calm authority reminded Maya of Commander Hayes.
You'll be tested on everything you've learned during your specialized training, but under conditions that simulate real operational requirements.
Physical performance, mental resilience, leadership capability, decision-making under pressure, and team integration will all be assessed. Dr. Mitt, Chen approached with her familiar monitoring equipment. "We'll be tracking your physiological and neurological responses throughout the week," she explained. "Not to help you improve, but to document the changes that have occurred during your training. The data will be used to evaluate whether similar programs should be developed for other candidates." Maya realized that she had become more than just a trainee trying to earn a place in the SEALs. She had become a test case for an entirely new approach to developing elite operators. The pressure was enormous, but it was also clarifying. She wasn't just fighting for her own dreams anymore. She was fighting for the dreams of every person who might benefit from similar training in the future. The first day of evaluation focused on individual performance under extreme conditions. Maya was required to complete a series of physical and mental challenges that combined everything she had learned during her 8 weeks of specialized training. Swimming exercises that tested her cardiovascular adaptations, strength challenges that measured her muscular development, cognitive tasks that evaluated her mental resilience, and psychological assessments that probed her breaking points. What struck Maya was how natural it all felt. The challenges that would have seemed impossible 8 weeks earlier now felt like appropriate tests of capabilities she knew she possessed. Not easy. Nothing about SEAL training was ever easy, but appropriate. During one exercise, Maya was required to solve a complex tactical problem while hanging from a rope over cold water, her body weight supported only by her grip strength. 8 weeks earlier, she couldn't have supported her body weight long enough to think clearly. Now she found herself analyzing the tactical scenario with complete focus while her muscles burned from the sustained effort. The evaluators took detailed notes but gave no feedback, maintaining professional objectivity that reminded Maya of the early weeks when every instructor seemed to view her as a guaranteed failure. But their attention felt different now. Instead of watching for signs of impending failure, they seemed to be documenting capabilities that exceeded expectations. Day 2 introduced team-based scenarios where Maya was required to integrate with other SEAL candidates and active operators. This was the test she had been most nervous about. Since her specialized training had been largely individual, would she be able to work effectively with others who hadn't undergone the same mental and physical transformation? The answer came quickly. During the first team exercise, a complex amphibious operation that required precise coordination between 6 operators, Maya found herself naturally falling into a leadership role, not because she was the strongest or most experienced, but because her training had taught her to see patterns and solutions that others missed. "Rodriguez, take point on the navigation," the team leader instructed during their mission briefing. Maya accepted the responsibility without hesitation, drawing on the mental mapping skills she had developed during her solo navigation training. As the team moved through the challenging terrain, Maya realized that her transformation had created capabilities that were valuable to others. Her ability to maintain cognitive clarity under stress allowed her to spot navigation errors before they became problems. Her experience with breaking point management helped her recognize when team members were approaching their limits and needed support. Most importantly, her months of experience with failure and recovery gave her credibility when she offered encouragement to struggling teammates. When one operator began to show signs of mental fatigue during a particularly demanding section of the exercise, Maya was able to provide the kind of specific practical support that only comes from personal experience with similar challenges. "Stay with the technical aspects," she advised quietly. "Your body is tired, but your mind can still solve the navigation problem. Let your training handle the physical stuff while you focus on the cognitive requirements. The advice worked, and the team completed their mission successfully. During the debrief, the team leader made a note that would become part of Maya's evaluation. Rodriguez demonstrated natural leadership capabilities and unusually effective stress management, both for herself and for team members under pressure. Day 3 brought solo operations, where Maya was required to complete complex missions entirely on her own. This was where her specialized training would either prove its worth or reveal its limitations. Without teammates to rely on, she would have to demonstrate that her individual capabilities were truly elite level. The first solo mission required Maya to infiltrate a simulated enemy facility, gather specific intelligence, and extract without detection. The physical requirements were demanding but within her capabilities. The mental requirements were more challenging, requiring her to maintain situational awareness and make tactical decisions while managing multiple stresses simultaneously. What surprised Maya was how much she enjoyed the challenge. The solo operation allowed her to fully utilize the mental tools she had developed, making decisions based on her training without having to coordinate with others or explain her reasoning. She moved through the exercise with a kind of focused intensity that felt natural and effective. The mission was successful, completed within the time parameters, and without any significant errors. But more importantly, Maya realized that she had approached the challenge with genuine excitement rather than anxiety. The person who had once been terrified of every training evolution now found satisfaction in complex, high-stakes operations. Days 4 and 5 introduced stress scenarios designed to test Maya's breaking points. The evaluators had studied the data from her specialized training and designed challenges specifically intended to push her beyond the limits she had previously demonstrated. Extended underwater operations that tested her oxygen management capabilities. Sleep deprivation scenarios that challenged her cognitive performance under extreme fatigue. Cold weather operations that pushed her physiological adaptation systems to their limits. Pain management exercises that evaluated her ability to function while dealing with simulated injuries. Each challenge revealed the same pattern. Maya's specialized training had not just improved her performance, it had fundamentally changed her relationship with limitation. Instead of seeing breaking points as barriers to overcome, she had learned to see them as starting points for deeper capability. During one particularly grueling exercise where Maya was required to complete a complex logistics task after 36 hours without sleep, she found herself entering a state of consciousness that she had learned to recognize during her training. Physical exhaustion became background information rather than an emergency signal, allowing her mind to focus completely on the cognitive requirements of the task. The evaluators documented performance levels that exceeded what they had expected, even based on her training data. She's not just meeting the standards, one evaluator noted. She's operating at levels we typically see only in operators with years of field experience. Day 6 brought leadership evaluations, where Maya was placed in command of mixed teams including both other candidates and experienced operators. This was the ultimate test of whether her transformation was complete. Could she lead people who had more experience and possibly greater natural capabilities? The first leadership scenario required Maya to guide a team through a complex rescue operation with multiple variables and time pressures. The team included 2 operators with combat experience who outranked her in every measurable category except her specialized training. Maya approached the challenge by drawing on everything she had learned about decision-making under pressure. Instead of trying to prove her authority through dominance or technical superiority, she focused on creating conditions where each team member could perform at their best. Williams, your navigation experience makes you the best choice for route planning. She delegated to one of the senior operators. Jackson, your combat background gives you the best tactical judgment for threat assessment. I'll coordinate information flow and make final decisions based on your inputs. The approach worked perfectly. By leveraging each team member's strengths while maintaining clear command authority, Maya was able to guide the team through a successful operation that achieved all objectives within the required timeframes. During the post-mission debrief, Williams, the senior operator, provided feedback that would become central to Maya's final evaluation. Rodriguez demonstrated exceptional leadership judgment. She understood that leadership isn't about being the best at everything, but about getting the best out of everyone. Day 7 brought the comprehensive final assessment, where Maya was required to demonstrate every capability she had developed during her 8 weeks of training. Physical performance, mental resilience, leadership skills, team integration, individual operations, and stress management were all evaluated through a day-long exercise that simulated a complete SEAL mission from planning to execution. Maya approached the final assessment with complete calm. Not because she was certain of success, but because she had learned that her value wasn't determined by any single performance. She had become someone who could continue growing and adapting regardless of outcomes. And that person was worth becoming regardless of whether she earned the right to continue in SEAL training. The mission scenario was complex, requiring Maya to lead a 4-person team through a multi-phase operation that included amphibious infiltration, land navigation, target reconnaissance, tactical decision-making under pressure, and extraction under simulated enemy contact. Each phase of the operation tested different aspects of Maya's development. The amphibious phase challenged her cardiovascular adaptations and swimming capabilities. The navigation phase evaluated her cognitive performance under physical stress. The reconnaissance phase tested her mental resilience and attention to detail. The tactical decision-making phase assessed her leadership capabilities and judgment under pressure. Maya found herself drawing on every aspect of her specialized training, switching fluidly between the different mental and physical tools she had developed. When the team encountered unexpected challenges, she adapted their approach using the problem-solving technique she had learned. When team members showed signs of stress or fatigue, she provided support based on her own experience with breaking point management. The operation was successful in every measurable way, but Maya realized that success or failure had ceased to be her primary concern. She had become genuinely curious about how well she could perform, but not anxious about the results. The person she had become was valuable regardless of any external validation. As the final exercise concluded, Maya stood with her team on the beach where her journey had begun 8 weeks earlier. The same sand, the same Pacific Ocean, the same California sunshine, but everything else had changed completely. Commander Hayes approached with the evaluation team, their expressions professionally neutral, but their body language suggesting that significant decisions had been made. "Rodriguez," he said, "the evaluation team needs to discuss their findings. Report to Building 618 at 1400 hours for the final assessment briefing." Maya nodded, feeling remarkably calm about whatever verdict awaited her. The 8 weeks of specialized training had given her something that no evaluation could take away: complete confidence in her ability to continue growing and adapting regardless of circumstances. She spent the morning hours with her original classmates, who had watched her transformation with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. Johnson approached her as she sat on her bunk, preparing for what might be her final meeting with Commander Hayes. "Rodriguez, whatever happens this afternoon, you should know that you changed how all of us think about what's possible," Johnson said. "Watching you refuse to quit, then watching you become one of our strongest performers. It made the rest of us realize that we had been setting our own limits too low." Other recruits nodded their agreement. Maya realized that her transformation had created ripple effects throughout her class, inspiring others to push past their own perceived limitations. Regardless of whether she personally continued in the program, the experience had demonstrated something valuable about human potential and the power of refusing to accept predetermined limits. At 1400 hours, Maya reported to Building 618 for the final time. The facility that had been the site of her systematic reconstruction now felt like a second home, filled with equipment that had become familiar tools rather than intimidating challenges. Commander Hayes was waiting with the complete evaluation team and Dr. Chen, who was reviewing final data reports on her tablet. The atmosphere was formal but not unfriendly, more like a medical consultation than a military tribunal. "Rodriguez," Commander Hayes began, "the evaluation team has completed their assessment of your performance during the specialized training program. Dr. Chen has compiled comprehensive data on your physiological and neurological development. We're ready to present our findings." Maya stood at attention, prepared for whatever verdict they had reached. "Dr. Maya." Chen spoke first. "From a scientific perspective, the changes documented during your 8-week program are unprecedented. Your cardiovascular capacity improved by 47%. Your strength-to-weight ratios increased by 38%. Your cognitive performance under stress improved by measures that we didn't think were possible in such a short time frame." She looked up from her tablet. "But the most significant changes were neurological. Your brain's response to stress fundamentally altered during the training. Instead of stress degrading your performance, it now enhances it. That's an adaptation we've never documented before." One of the senior evaluators stepped forward. "From an operational perspective, your performance during the evaluation week exceeded our expectations in every category: leadership capabilities, individual performance, team integration, decision-making under pressure, all at levels we typically see only in operators with years of field experience." Maya felt a surge of pride, but she remained focused on what came next. Commander Hayes looked directly at her. "The question we faced wasn't whether you had improved enough to meet SEAL standards. You demonstrated capabilities that exceed those standards in most areas. The question was whether the specialized training program produced genuine development or artificial enhancement that might not translate to real operational environments. He paused, and Maya realized this was the critical moment. The evaluation team concluded that your development is genuine and sustainable. You didn't just learn to perform better on tests. You became someone capable of continuous growth and adaptation under any conditions. That's the fundamental quality we look for in Navy SEALs. Maya felt her heart racing, but she maintained her composed exterior. Therefore, Commander Hayes continued, you are being recommended for immediate integration into the advanced phases of SEAL training. You will rejoin your original class, but with additional responsibilities as a mentor and example for other candidates who are struggling with their own limitations. The words hit Maya like a physical impact. After 8 weeks of uncertainty, after months of failure and struggle, after a lifetime of being told that her dreams were unrealistic, she had not just earned a place in the program. She had earned recognition as someone who could help others achieve their own transformations. More than that, Commander Hayes added, your specialized training program is being developed into a systematic protocol for candidates who show potential but struggle with traditional training methods. You're not just the first person to complete this program. You're the prototype for an entirely new approach to developing elite operators. Dr. Chen approached with a thick folder containing data and analysis from Maya's 8-week journey. This documentation will be used to help others who face similar challenges. Your transformation provides proof that limitations are often assumptions rather than facts. Maya accepted the folder, realizing that her personal journey had become something larger than individual achievement. She had become evidence that human potential extends far beyond what traditional measurements suggest. Do you have any questions about your new status? Commander Hayes asked. Maya considered the question carefully. Sir, what happens to candidates who don't have access to specialized training but who show the same kind of determination I showed during my first 3 weeks? Commander Hayes smiled. That's exactly the right question, Rodriguez. Part of your new responsibilities will involve identifying those candidates and helping to implement modified training protocols based on what we learned from your program. Maya realized that her experience with failure had prepared her not just to succeed personally, but to help others transform their own limitations into capabilities. Over the following weeks, as Maya integrated back into regular training with her original class, the full impact of her transformation became clear. She wasn't just performing at elite levels. She was helping to create an environment where others could achieve their own breakthroughs. During one particularly challenging evolution, Maya found herself working with a struggling candidate named Martinez, a recruit whose situation reminded her strongly of her own early weeks. Maya was able to provide exactly the kind of support that she wished had been available during her darkest moments. Martinez, the exercise isn't designed to test whether you can already do this perfectly, Maya explained during a brief break. It's designed to teach your body and mind how to adapt. Every failure is information, not judgment. The advice helped Martinez improve his performance, but more importantly, it helped him develop a different relationship with challenge and struggle. Instead of seeing difficulty as evidence of inadequacy, he began to see it as evidence of growth opportunity. Chief Martinez, who had witnessed Maya's complete transformation from the weakest performer in the class to one of the strongest, began using her journey as a teaching tool for other instructors. Rodriguez proved that our job isn't to identify who already has what it takes, he would explain. Our job is to help people discover what they're capable of becoming. 6 months after Maya's completion of the specialized training program, Commander Hayes received a report that would change how the Navy approached SEAL candidate development. 3 more candidates had successfully completed modified versions of Maya's training protocol, and dozens of others had benefited from the techniques and principles that her program had validated. But the most significant impact was cultural. Maya's refusal to accept predetermined limitations had inspired an entire training community to reconsider their assumptions about human potential. Instead of focusing primarily on identifying existing capability, instructors began focusing on developing latent capability. Maya herself had become something unprecedented, a Navy SEAL whose greatest contribution wasn't just operational excellence, but proof that excellence could be developed in people who initially appeared to lack the necessary qualities. During her graduation ceremony, as Maya received the insignia that represented years of dreaming and months of struggle, Commander Hayes addressed the assembled crowd of new SEALs and their families. Today we graduate operators who will serve our nation with distinction, he said. But we also celebrate something more important, proof that human potential extends far beyond what any measurement or assessment can capture. These new SEALs didn't just meet our standards, they redefined what we thought was possible. Maya looked out at the audience. Seeing her parents who had supported her impossible dreams, her classmates who had witnessed her transformation, and the instructors who had learned alongside her, that limitation is often assumption disguised as fact. But what moved her most was seeing a group of current SEAL candidates in the audience, recruits who were struggling with their own challenges, and who had come to witness the graduation of someone who had proven that struggling doesn't mean failing. After the ceremony, a young candidate approached Maya with the kind of desperate hope that she recognized from her own early weeks at Bud/S. "Ma'am, I'm failing most of my exercises. Everyone expects me to quit. Do you think the specialized training program might work for someone like me?" Maya looked at the candidate, seeing her former self in his expression of determination mixed with despair. "The program might help you," she replied. "But the most important thing you need to understand is that you already have everything required to succeed. The training just teaches you how to recognize it." As Maya walked away from her graduation ceremony, wearing the insignia she had dreamed of earning since childhood, she realized that her journey had come full circle. She had begun as someone who refused to accept that her dreams were impossible. She had become someone who could help others discover that their own limitations might be nothing more than assumptions waiting to be challenged. The girl who had been failing every drill had become a Navy SEAL. But more than that, she had become proof that with the right approach, the right support, and the absolute refusal to quit, anyone could transform their greatest weaknesses into their most powerful strengths. Commander Hayes had been right about the life-changing order he had given her 8 months earlier. But the change hadn't just affected Maya. It had created ripples that would influence SEAL training for generations to come, ensuring that future candidates who showed heart but struggled with traditional methods would have a path forward. Maya Rodriguez had earned her place among the most elite warriors in the world, but her greatest achievement was proving that elite performance could be developed rather than just discovered, and that the only true limitation is the willingness to keep trying when trying seems pointless. In the end, she had become exactly what she had always been, someone who refused to quit. The difference was that now she knew how powerful that refusal could be when properly channeled and systematically developed. The SEAL who had once been failing every drill was now teaching others that failure is just the beginning of transformation.